Today's podcast releases Monday, November 25th, just a few days before we kick off our annual Black Friday event at collectivehorology.com. Now, the only way to get access to our Black Friday event is to join the Collective list. To do that and to get all the details on the event, just visit collectivehorology.com/Black Friday. And we have a special thank you for podcast listeners. If you enter code PODCAST at checkout during our Black Friday event, we've got a special gift we'll include with every purchase. This is Open Work, a look inside the watch industry, a podcast from Collective Horology. I'm Gabe Riley, co-founder of Collective.
And I'm Asher Rapkin, co-founder of Collective. Collective Horology is an independent watch retailer based in Southern California. We carry a wide range of independent brands, along with our latest and 10th collaboration, the Zenith DEFY Skyline CX. To learn more about us and check out our available inventory, please visit collectivehorology.com.
Speaking of the Zenith DEFY Skyline CX, today we've got a bonus episode of the podcast. It's a discussion between myself and Romain Marietta, who's the Chief Product Officer at Zenith. We actually sat down recently in Geneva to discuss not only our latest collaboration, but also how he and Zenith approach product development and their business. Look, Romain is a great guy. We've now worked with Zenith going back 6 years. And I think what we love about Zenith, and one of the things we talk about in here, is the strength of Zenith, not only as a watch manufacturer, but really and especially over the last 5 years, like a design powerhouse in the watch industry. But I think at their core, and Romain is a perfect example of this, and I think you'll pick it up in the interview, he's really just a good guy and someone who is truly passionate about watches. When we spend time with the Zenith team and Romain in particular, we spend most of our time just talking about watches in general. And so I thought it would be good to share this, which originally we recorded as a video. So there is a video, a condensed version of this video up on our YouTube channel if you want to check that out, because of course there are plenty of things we talk about that are visual since we intended it to be a video. But in editing that video, the conversation ended up being the kind of thing I thought would be perfect for the podcast.
Yeah, I think we can dive right in. But before we do, I want to point out, look, on this podcast, it's no stranger, or no one should be shocked to learn, rather, that Gabe and I have a bit of an aversion to gigantic corporations. And one thing that I think Romain and his team, and frankly, just Zenith writ large, deserves a lot of credit for is they operate and they feel like a really small, hungry business inside of a much larger operation. And what that translates into is not only being pleasant people to work with, which Gabe touched on, but also a lack of aversion to risk. And this is not common. I mean, if any of you have worked or do currently work in corporations, think about what it takes to get somebody above you to really take a risk on something creative or different or innovative that may not work.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, just from a business standpoint, what we're talking about here is Zenith is not only an established mainstream brand, but they're a part of LVMH, which is not only one of the largest luxury holding companies in the world, it's one of the largest companies in the world in terms of revenue and market capitalization, period.
Yeah. So there's a lot, I think, to unpack when you see an organization that's healthy enough to be willing to not only take risks, but champion them. Because the thing about risks is they don't always work out. And if you're willing to roll the dice on something that you really believe in, then I think you have the opportunity to also win big. And that's why we love working with Zenith and why we loved working with Romain and his team, because they would look for what the right idea was, not necessarily what the most obvious idea was. And that's not common. So as you guys listen to the conversation, I would just keep that in the back of your head, that this is a C-level executive we're talking to. This isn't a junior designer. And listen to the way he speaks, the passion he speaks with, and the honesty and integrity he speaks with too.
All right. Well, with that, let's roll the discussion. Romain, thanks for joining.
Welcome. Thank you.
Now, this is obviously not Collective's first collaboration. In fact, it's our 10th collaboration. And we're doing it with Zenith because our first collaboration was with you. So this is a milestone for us. And I have to say, without Zenith, there would be no Collective. So thank you for making it possible.
Well, pleasure. It's also a milestone for us, I would say. We are very glad to collaborate with you once again, to celebrate also the fact that you grew up. And we have been the witness of this, and it's super, you guys are passionate and are it's our pleasure to be also a partner for this 10th anniversary edition.
Well, let's go back to that first watch, because I think it's important. The watch we're talking about today really is in many ways a coda to that first watch. Tell us about the watch. What exactly was that first watch we made together, and why on earth would you agree to a project with a couple of guys from California?
Well, I remember you guys when I first saw you. It was actually in Geneva, so it's also an anniversary, a bit of an homage of what we have done like 5 years ago. At that time, one of the best sellers of the brand was the Chronomaster 38. This is the one that we have chosen back then. So it was I would say, one of the main platform of piece that was a bestseller. We haven't made any collaboration on that piece. It was like a landmark piece that we cannot really touch. So I remember that when I first saw your briefing, it was kind of, it was surprising. But then we met in flesh. There was just genuine passion that was emerging from you guys. So that's also why we have decided to say, okay, let's go. Let's see whatever happened. What can happen? What in the hell can happen with this special edition? So we like also to innovate and to push boundaries. The briefing also was kind of very interesting because it's really also, I would say, representing from where you were based in the West Coast in a very creative cradle. So yeah, that's why we said, okay, let's go for it. Let's try. It's a 50 units edition and it's now a legend, I would say.
I'm wearing the watch today. And you mentioned
it's been a long time I haven't seen it.
Yeah, well, here it is.
Yeah.
Back in the flesh. The brief on that was an interesting one. At the time, Collective had been founded in Silicon Valley. Yeah. We're in Southern California now. And the idea for that first collaboration was to bring the reductive product design language of Silicon Valley to the El Primero. Yeah. And you guys really embraced that and went with it. I guess one question for you is, on that project and on this watch in particular, is there a detail or a design element that stands out?
But this particular watch is all about details in reality. And I remember we had a lot of back and forth, and it was one of the first time also where we have been so close to small details that were not, I would say, that were first for us. I mean, finishings on the case, this reductive also approach on the dial with this almost monochromatic approach. No date. That was a no date request. It's one of the few that we have did so far yet. So you're a lucky. That's a lucky one.
Is a hallmark of the El Primero.
Yeah, and that was one request on which I remember I fought again a bit, but it's also part of the design. So it was a nice approach, a nice first approach for us on creating something vintage inspired, but in a modern way, twisted. It also helped us a lot for the coming releases that we have done over the last 5-6 years. So we also, I can also now thank you to have been able to work on that one. And it's all about proud. So interesting to have been able to work on such a reduced design element and language.
Well, thank you. As I said, it just wouldn't be possible without you. And you mentioned Collective has really grown up in the last 6 years since we first met. In many ways, Zenith has come into its own. The modern Zenith brand has really come into its own, and in particular has really been recognized as a design powerhouse. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of curious, since you're the head of product at Zenith, what has the journey over the last 6 years been like for you? How has the brand's approach, in particular to design, changed and evolved?
But I guess honestly that since 2018-19 we have been really more. I mean, we dug a bit more in our roots DNA. We came with the revival, so we took more care of our legacy. The approach on the design has been very faithful to that, but trying to twisting it. That was maybe one of the first take on that. And then we came with the first revival. So that case, the tonneau shape. So we created the revival. We created the icons, programs of vintage products. The approach is very pragmatic. We are also very much like you guys, geeks and passionate about watches, any kind of. So the inspiration is coming from any kind of watches. The key for us, the key element is proportion. It has to be the right proportion. Then you have also to work with your own DNA, which means here the El Primero, basically, it has a diameter, it has a thickness. You have to play with this. You have to respect this. Of course, you can do some trick of designs. You can go from 38 millimeters up to 45, but it lives more in 38, between 38 to 41. I think we just found our way, and we were more closer to our DNA values, who we are really. We really found the design element and languages that we really wanted for the whole 4 different collection that we have now developed over the last 5 years. So yeah, thank you for the mention of this. I think we worked hard on that, but basically it's because we just really did like an introspection, I guess, honestly, and we found our way.
So collaborations have been an important part of that last 6 years as well, and something that I think collectors really look forward to with Zenith. You know, there's some brands who have embraced collaboration, and they've gotten some pushback from the collector community that there are too many collaborations. Whereas I think with Zenith, you guys embrace collaborations, but you're thoughtful about them. And some of my favorite collaborations that you've done are things like the poker chip with SJX. I think that's just one of my favorite projects, collaborative watches really ever. It's such a wild design, but yet inherently very Zenith. Why do you guys embrace collaboration? And from, I think, a design and a creative standpoint, what do collaborations allow you to do?
But collaboration allow you to try to develop going on different fields, different paths. You can explore. We like to explore. We like to innovate. And sometimes it's also a way to test the market, to taste your brands, the audience, the reaction. Of course, we have also the power to select, which is good. Maybe at first we had some requests coming from we were maybe requesting some collaboration at first, and then requests came more and more, and then we have been able to select. We try not to overlap them, of course. It has to stay true to who we are. It has to also be a win-win situation. It has to help you. It has to help us. It has to that it doesn't need to interfere with our core collection, of course, because it has to bring something new on the table for the collectors. So for us, it's really, if we have a nice exchange with, it's all about relation. It's all about human beings having a discussion, sitting there like we are, and then just having fun. And if we have fun and then we can make business, that's super cool. So this is exactly the spirit of the collaboration. But now we can, of course, select a bit more. We can sometimes come back on some. The poker chip was something interesting. It's really coming from a die-hard fan and recognized journalist, but also fan of watches at the end. Jashan is just a big fan of watches, and we are. So do we. So, and like you guys. So, yeah, just about human beings. And then afterwards, if you can make business, that's cool.
Yeah, I guess one thing that is unusual about your approach to collaborations is you'll revisit with the same partners. So obviously Collective here, you've done a couple of pieces with Hodinkee, with Revolution, Carl Cox, Felipe Pantone, some really remarkable stuff. What is it in revisiting collaborations? What does that allow you to do when you go back to a partner for a second time and either explore a different take on an idea or a new creative space? Why do it again?
If it has been a success, obviously you want to do it once again, because at the end it's about business, but it's also because of the pleasure we may had at that time at the first edition, and then we do a second one, and then we do a third one. But it has to be, of course, it has to stay true to the first concept of maybe the first one. Maybe you can also do a sequel. You can do like something that you missed on the first one, or that you maybe wanted to redo, or now you can have you have now new possibilities in terms of technology that you can use and that you can bring on the table for the second opus. At the end, as I said, it's a relation. It has to stay true to the value of the brand. It has to be coherent also on our side, of course, but in that case here with you guys. And if it can be a following story of the first one, then it's super cool. And I guess that, like the one that we are presenting now, it's also in the same spirit of the first one, but on a different note, different approach, different collection, different model. And it's also bringing something new to the collectors. The one that really love the CO1, they might also like what we did with the CX because it's still in the same spirit.
So let's talk about the CX at a creative level. Let's talk about the core creative concept and how it relates to the first watch. How is it in many ways an extension of or a revisiting of what we did together in that first watch?
Well, for us, when we thought about the second opus, to be totally transparent, when we talked with the team, we know where you're based, Creative Cradle, very much, of course, led by brands like Apple, Google, and they have also a territory, a design image language that we like, that is also inspired from the industrial design. For the one that we are talking here, Dieter Rams was an inspiration. The whole work he did for Braun, for Witzo. We are also big fans of furniture, of this kind of also objects that are in our daily life. We not only like watches, we like all sort of design. And this was the trait d'union, the thin line that was linking the first edition and this one, to think about where you're based in the West Coast, and to make it live once again, and then inspire ourselves from this kind of industrial design that we love also.
Yeah, it's interesting. Usually when we work with a partner on a collaboration, we usually bring the creative idea and let them do the watch.
You did.
Do the watch design. And we brought some very different ideas to you guys initially, and you came back with designs. You responded to those briefs and said, all right, well, here are some designs that would work with the creative ideas you guys are proposing. Yeah. But we have another idea we want to show you. And you showed us, the idea that led to the watch we have now, which was to explore this space of 1970s industrial design. And for us, it clicked initially. I think our temptation or our initial approach was to say, we did the C1. Now let's do the opposite. Let's do something completely different. In part because we love the design range of Zenith. Yeah. And we figured on our second watch, let's do something really wild. We were very restrained here. Let's be unrestrained because you guys can approach design in so many different ways with color, shapes, finishes. So we wanted to do that. And your idea when you presented it to us, which was to say, our first watch was inspired by modern Silicon Valley design language. So on the second watch, let's go deeper and look at actually what inspired that design language and go even further. And it was 1970s industrial design, the Braun School of Design, Dieter Rams. Exactly. And in that way, it made so much sense. It was like, okay, now we can do something here that's different, but still feels related. And what I think is interesting is we're doing it on the DEFY collection, which I believe the first DEFY came out in 1969. Yes. We've talked a lot about 70s watches at Collective. We did another 70s watch last year with Oris, and it was interesting. A lot of the design cues that we think of as 70s design cues actually came out of the year 1969. And obviously many significant watches came out of the year of 1969, including the DEFY. What I think is so cool is with the DEFY and with 1970s industrial design, typically when people think about 1970s design, when you close your eyes and think about the 1970s, we tend to think of a very caricatured design language, lots of colors, lots of fluid shapes. But really the 70s is this fascinating landscape of design when there were many important schools of design and architecture that lived together. Obviously, industrial design, brutalism was important in the 1970s as well. And I guess, how do you think about this watch almost as potentially a modern interpretation of what it means, not just from a watchmaking standpoint to explore the DEFY, because obviously the current DEFY collection is very modern, but it almost feels like we're modernizing 70s design here and looking at what it would look like if the DEFY almost continued uninterrupted from the 1970s into today. So a long way of saying, I feel like the design language here is complementary to the DEFY because they're of a similar vintage. How do you guys see that?
But that was exactly the aim. I mean, you perfectly resume in a nutshell the idea to try to execute a watch nowadays that could have been created in the 1970s. It's a very edgy design. I mean, the first DEFY from 1969, it's nothing really linked to what could have been designed at that time. It was more round, as you said, a lot of colors. At the same time, we did this kind of tonneau shape case, and the actual DEFY collection end case is totally different. It's more edgy. So yeah, it was an approach that we wanted to be very brutal on the design, very reduced, once again, make it very coherent with the rest of the collection, but at the same time different. We are also using here, I would say, a movement that is in another sublines of our collection DEFY, used for the first time with the plain dial approach that we have done. We have created a very specific pattern for this piece. So a lot of first on this one is created in order to be also very faithful to this functionalist school that we tried to approach with this piece that we are launching together.
So in addition to being watch geeks, and it really is true, one of the things we love about hanging out with Romain and his team is we'll spend most of our time just talking about watches, and not even Zenith watches, just other watches. But in addition to being a watch geek, you're also a design nerd. And I know your team takes design very seriously. Yeah. So the idea of it in exploring 1970s and industrial design has to be a little bit overwhelming. You want to make sure you get it right, because when you veer into this territory, it's very much a territory of design geeks and design nerds and people who really understand and appreciate the details and the school of design of Braun industrial design and Dieter Rams. There's been a lot published on it. So it's a kind of an overwhelming territory to step into. Mm-hmm. How did you and your team approach doing that and making sure that you're doing something that feels right for this project and right for Zenith, but is also mindful that this is a very serious school of design with people who love it and take it seriously and are fans of it?
Well, first, very in a humble way, of course, because I mean we are nobody if we compare ourselves to a guy like Dieter Rams or all the other guys from the industrial design back then. But we respect, of course, what has been done. We are big fans of, as I said, furniture and all these objects. I personally love really the 70s. I was not born in the 70s, so it might be why I really like it, because I would have loved to be in that period if I would have been 18 years old or 20 years old. So we also, I mean, and the team is also the same. I mean, they love this. They try to immerse themselves in this era, in this period, and they are just design geeks. And we also love furniture. We have we have this kind of books already in our shelves inside our offices. So the book of Dieter Rams and all the others, they were already in our shelves. So we just had to open them and to say, okay, well, let's deep dive inside this design and how can we handle it. Then it's a natural process of trying to respect all the codes. It's hard to define how we have been able to manage, but we just love it, genuinely passionate about this. And then if you make things with love and passion, then it's kind of easy to end with something that looks cool if you can adapt it to the right product. And I guess that the DEFY collection is the right one. If we would have tried once again in the Chronomaster collection, it would be not as successful for sure, because it's not the same platform, it's not the same spirit. So I think we choose the right one, and I hope that the people will like what we have done, what we have created.
I think it's one of those projects where when you look at this watch, you say to yourself, oh, this feels like it could be, yes, it's a collaboration in a limited edition, but it feels like it could be part of the core collection.
It's very important, yeah.
Because the design concept and the platform of the DEFY Skyline really do complement one another. Yeah. They come from the same era and the same overall approach, but this just brings a particular aesthetic to it. One thing I remember you guys said to us when we decided, let's move forward with this direction and explore this. You said, okay, we're going to need some time here because we need to make sure we get this right. Yeah. If we're going to veer into this world of industrial design, we're going to need a little bit of time to make sure we research this, we get the details right, we find the right reference and the things that inspire us and do it in a very thoughtful and meticulous way. Yeah. So on that point, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the details of this watch. So can you just walk us through at a high level kind of the key design details of the DEFY Skyline CX, and in particular, some of the details and the aspect of design that you in particular really like?
But one of the main elements, and you will see it, of course, when you will discover the product, is to try to innovate and try to be right with the dial, the face of the watch. We have developed a very specific pattern in line and true to our DNA and signature of the dial that we are having in the core collection, but twisted with the right, I would say the right amount of reduced design also elements. Try to create a gradient pattern that also looks like all the bone and the speakers and all these kinds of music, furniture and object that he created for Braun. And that was the idea, of course, mainly. We wanted also to have a very specific finishing for the whole watch, for the whole case, but also for the bracelets. We have also this touch of color because it's still the 70s. So we also had to make it pop a bit. So we have this faded orange color that was also one of the key signature element of this industrial design era. And then we discussed some other details that are more for geeks and passionate, but it's a whole microblasted case, bracelet, but we also have revealed some of the edges or element of the case construction in full polished. So when you look at the watch also from the side, you also have some elements that are popping out and are not totally microblasted. Of course, you can flip with the bracelet because of the system that we have on DEFY. We have this interchangeable strap system that allow us to give another, not face, but another look at the watch. And we just had some colors with this orange color. One thing which is also unique to your piece, we use the skeleton movement of the DEFY Skyline skeleton that we are hiding basically with a dial, with this specific dial with the pattern. Because we wanted to have no date. Once again,
we got away with it twice.
You won twice. A lot of people are requesting no dates on a lot of our product when we do collab, but you have been the lucky winner. But it was also logic,
sure.
and it makes very, very much sense for the design we wanted. We wanted to have the dial also very symmetric, if I can say so. So we needed to have the tenths of a second at 6 o'clock. So that's why we are using the movement of the skeleton version of the Skyline.
Yeah, and I think when you take the El Primero movement, when you take the DEFY Skyline and you take this sort of industrial approach to design, it really comes together in sort of a package that is a very modern look at some timeless design and, of course, watchmaking from the 1970s. Yeah.
But I hope it's going to be the first feeling and emotion that will pop out of this piece as soon as you put it on the wrist. That's the aim. That's the target of the whole,
it feels like a watch that's very much of a time, but also timeless, exactly. Which is one of the very interesting things about industrial design of the 70s. It's one of those design schools that really lasted and endured to this day and reflected in things we see everywhere around us.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's now benchmarks. I mean, these kind of design are totally timeless. So this is what we also have tried in a humble way, in our own way, together to create this piece that if you look at it in 50 years or maybe more, you will still have this spirit and it will still look very much up to date. Very important.
Well, Romain, thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you for the project and your friendship over the years.
It's been a pleasure. It's a shared pleasure.
Greatly appreciative of it. And like I said, there just wouldn't be a collective without Zenith and without Romain in particular. And thank you for listening. Open Work is a production of Collective Horology. You can find us and the Zenith DEFY Skyline CX online at collectivehorology.com. To get in touch with your suggestions, your feedback, or questions, just email podcast@collectivehorology.com.